Hey there, ever peoples. Welcome back to the D&D 3.5 book club, the book club where we talk about all things 3.5 and 3.5 adjacent. Today, well, my name is Cliff. Today, I'm joined by my co-hosts Lonnie Morris. Lonnie, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good today.
And we are once again joined by Charles. Charles, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
So Charles, I realized last week that I forgot a very important of the section of the show. So with me and Lonnie and everybody else who's been on the show, I always ask, how did you get started in tabletop gaming? And, how did you get started in 3.5? And like what kind of effect has 3.5 had on, the games you play and the way that you uh, you know, role play nowadays. So I figured I would just go ahead and remedy that situation and ask you, Charles, how did you get into gaming?
Oh wow. So if you want to go way back, I think probably my first exposure with role playing thing, what got me interested in D&D were those choose your own adventure books. Uh, Going way back, they have do you do this or that? Turn to that page. Um, so I liked that choices thing. And it D&D sound interesting, but didn't know any groups and the like. And that was being a teenager. It wasn't until I went off to uh, college that I met some people who did the hobby, and one of them actually gave me his old 3.0 book, um, which I read cover to cover many times. Then Neverwinter Nights 2 came out, and I got that, and I played that,
That's a
which
good
is
game.
based on the 3.5. And then I went to AmeriCorps, and Cliff was there, and we
Yes, I
played,
was.
and we played a lot of D&D.
And we have been
Uh,
hanging out ever since.
yeah, and yeah, that's kind of my journey, starting with Choose Your Own Adventure books, someone lending them the book, and then finally meeting Cliff in AmeriCorps. And we in AmeriCorps we only had we bought a dice set, so we only had like the one dice set, the 1d20 and the 2d6 and everything like that we just moved around for each player's turn for rolling because we didn't
Yeah, and
have
like
our.
the thing is back then, I don't know if there was an SRD back then. I think there was, but I don't know if I'm not sure if we knew about it.
There was. I remember using it extensively.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the thing is, like, I didn't bring any of my books with me. So like AmeriCorps is this thing where it's generally for 18 to 24-year-olds. I think they upped the age limit to 25 now. But you leave wherever you're from, and you and these couple hundred other kids go to a place, and you spend a year like traveling around the country and volunteering and doing like all sorts of projects, and learning about project management and just nonprofit organizations, funding, and all this other stuff. But like, yeah, we we didn't have any books. I think we picked up like a copy of the player's handbook somewhere, but like we did not have the big extensive collection with us.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
mean,
used just the internet for the stats, stuff like that.
that always leads to fun times, man. Uh, I remember telling Cliff about my when I first got started. I didn't have books at all, and I just made stuff up based on what I could remember from my buddy's old 2.0 books, and sometimes you just gotta wing it. Like it's good when you have it, like the internet has made playing 3.5 with the SRD and getting like generic class and generic feats and all that stuff so easy. It's great. Like love having it around, but like that's what a lot you got to remember. A lot of people don't really like. You don't need the books. You just need some dice, or maybe even just a couple dice. Not even the right dice. You just some six-siders. You got a Yahtzee thing. You can make it work. Like if you want to play, you'll find a way to play.
Oh yeah, and that's another thing. Just to say a good thing about Paizo. Um, Something that Paizo does, I really enjoy Paizo. Uh, a cool thing that they do is they put their book out, and then a few weeks later they put everything up on the SRD. So it's like having this indexed search engine just for rules, right? So you don't need a rules compendium because you know, you got the internet, and it's all free. I mean, I always go ahead and buy their books anyway, but it's great that it's free.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how many of the Pathfinder First Edition books I have when all the information in them is out there free. But I just really like them. It's a great product, and but yeah, starting out, started playing this game, very bare bones, one set of dice for everyone to use.
And we had
And
huge groups. Like when we'd go back to base, there would be like 20 people playing. It was huge. I was cleaning out. So I recently moved, and I was cleaning some stuff out the other day, and I found my old binder of photos. It wasn't before Facebook, but it was back in those days where you still took physical photos a lot. And there was a photo in there of our group when we were playing, like at the last meeting that we had, and there had to be like 15, 16 people in that group.
Yeah,
One set of dice between us.
Yeah, one set of dice between all of us.
I mean,
I still have that dice set, by the way. And I still have the pawns that we found, the 4-color pawns that we use to mark things.
Yeah, I think they were sorry pieces.
They look like sorry pieces. Yeah, it's to still have those too.
At least the plus side to having one set of dice for 16 people is you don't have anybody interrupting saying I'm rolling a skill check.
Yeah. 100%.
It's may I please roll a skill check?
You're like, nah, I think I'm gonna do my thing first. You can have your turn on your turn.
That's flipping awesome. And Charles, I also kind of like, you made 2 points there that I really kind of vibed with. Number one was getting a book and just reading it cover to cover over and over and over because you didn't have anybody to play with. Like, yeah, when I first got 3.5, I didn't have anybody to play with either.
That's how we become game masters.
Yep. And I realized that early on. I realized that if I wanted to play this game, I was going to have to run it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's 100% accurate statement. I remember getting my 3.5 books when I was living in Missouri still, and I was so excited to have them. And I knew I had people that would play with me, but like I was the only one with the books, so I read them and I had to run it because I was the one that knew the rules and had to like help everybody make their characters and do all the things. So yeah, definitely the forever GM.
And it made us the people we are today. And then like looking back on it, it is kind of weird because like nowadays, you have Critical Role, you got all these, like you can just go to YouTube, you can watch people playing, you can get the gist of how to do it. Back then there was none of that, man. None of that.
Yeah, none of that.
Yeah.
I remember when I got after AmeriCorps, I got my own group together, and it's interesting. A lot of groups I came into, most of the players had no idea how to actually play the game, and there's pros and cons to that. And recently in one of my games, I had a player who was new to the system, not new to role-playing games in general, but new to this particular system. And he did so much research. He kind of reminded me of myself when I started playing, just getting really into it and figuring out the rules and the builds and everything.
Yeah, I remember like when I was in college, man, we had so many new people like coming in, and they would come in being like, yeah, I'm going to be a human fighter, most generic basic thing that they could make. But we had so many great, wonderful, skilled, amazing people who like had lots of books, read all the books that whenever the books were free to be read by somebody. And, they were once you'd been in that group for a little bit, like you were making a twinked out character, man. Like it was like it was crazy. Everybody there by the end of like the sessions was a master at making just the most broken, ridiculous, goofy, templated out characters that they could make because that was just how we rolled in that group.
We always had,
Especially,
we always had a joke that like uh good training to become a lawyer would be just playing 3.5.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because you're always arguing rules, man.
oh yeah, and like talking about powerful characters and everything like that. That also depends on the game master and if they know what level adjustment is and how it works and what you should do about
Oh
it.
yeah,
As
yeah,
we covered
yep.
last session.
Oh man, I still cannot believe that I did that stuff. But yeah, like 3.5 is a system I love it so much, and I still love running it to this day. But it is one of those systems where if you're a new GM and you have players that kind of get what's going on, and you know like you house rule stuff, or you're not really paying attention, like you can get run over, man.
hmm like not to point fingers at our boy here, but I seem to recall a recent Greyhawk game where somebody was using all of the the like celestial like goody goody like
Yeah, that
perks
was
like
a yeah,
vow of poverty
that was a weird character. That whole
vow of poverty nonsense, and he would just kill people randomly
yeah,
when it specifically says that you are absolutely not supposed to be doing that kind of stuff.
yeah. That I had to warn that guy multiple times. That was a weird character. Just a
Yeah,
crazy character. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that. Super
yeah,
weird.
no, it was awful.
But I agree. I probably should have put the kibosh on that like a lot sooner.
I mean, it like I'm okay with him running that character and playing that character like as like but if you're gonna play a character who's like rolling as a shaman and has a wolf and like wants to play vow of poverty so that you get all the crazy bonuses and you want to take all the super sacred feats and stuff, like then play the character how it's intended to be played. You're supposed to be the good guy. You're not supposed to be letting your teammates kill people. You're supposed to be trying to like turn the bad guys towards the good side and stuff like that. You're not supposed to be killing people after you interrogate them. And he,
Yeah,
yeah, and
I,
so it
I
was just like a
100%
very,
agree.
very weird, and I. To be fair, I've got lots of experience. I've played lots. I even had that book as one of the books that was amongst the big bag of books in my college club, but I personally never messed with that book, so I didn't know until I started going through it that you had to be a good boy to friggin' have those special feats. And I was like, well,
Oh
that
yeah,
makes sense why they're so damn powerful now, because
yeah.
like,
You got to be a super good boy. Like if you're playing with a GM who doesn't warn you and just like smacks you down if you step out of line, then you can get
cripple your
smacked.
character.
Yeah,
You can cripple your character.
you can get smacked in the face.
My recommendation, if you're a new game master and your players are more experienced than you are, or one of them is more experienced point, I recommend limiting them to the core book so that you're kind of more on an even playing field. There's not so many crazy things you have to worry about, and because you kind of have to learn too. Um, and then maybe afterwards expanding a bit once you're more familiar with the system. Um, if everyone's new, then it's much less of a problem. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Like, don't let like it's weird because like once you've played like a couple of games, you kind of are like, oh, like I can probably deal with this, and like you're like, yeah, sure, go like look through some books and pick some stuff out, but you really got to be like reading the books too. Like if you're an experienced GM and you're letting people like look through books, like make a list of books or add a new book every couple play sessions or something, and be like, yeah, so I read this book and I learned the rules about certain things that are supposed to happen in this book. Like now I'm letting you guys use this book. I'm introducing this book to you guys. Like you can use it in the next time we make characters or whatever, you know. But definitely be careful which books you allow people to like just take stuff from, because there's some seriously broken things. If you like, they're usually countered and have like a downside of some sort like built in, but if you don't read the book yourself, it's very easy for a player who's not exactly above board to just leave that bit out and not tell you that he's not supposed to do something, like or not supposed to like be able to keep being super overpowered and have whatever because he's being a bad guy, or he's not supposed to be able to take the artificer perk 4 times that lets him craft stuff at 25% cheaper, even though it says you can take it multiple times in the book, because there was a errata later on that said you're not allowed to take it multiple times because it would lead to making free magic items.
Free magic items.
Or taking a prestige class, which they do not actually qualify for.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. That's a big
Yeah, I feel like there's some exceptions to that one though. Like I think Arcane Archer. I
Yeah,
think it's
I knew exactly where you were going, and I was going there too.
I think it's really dumb that Arcane Archer is locked into elf
Well, see,
and half elf.
that's why I like what Paizo did is they removed that, and also the Dwarven Defender, they changed it to the Stalwart Defender, so everybody can be one.
Right. I don't like I really don't see racially locked prestige classes as being a good idea.
Yeah, 100% agree.
A limitation that I don't care for too much is a lot of them have like a role play consideration where they're like, oh, you have to be a notorious pirate to take levels in the prestige class, and it's kind of like, well, you know,
Yeah, there was a prestige class I was trying to take for Cliff's game where with my monk that required me to have gone to Pandora or whatever, like a different plane of existence, and found a special like monastery and trained at it. Like, and I was like, dude, can I not? Can I say that's in my backstory? Because
yeah,
like that's ridiculous.
yeah, where the game master would have to go out of their way to make this happen, to make you eligible for this prestige class.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite examples, which is actually super doable, and I've done it in campaign before without ruining the game master's thing or anything, was was pyrokinesis. The pyrokineticist from the Psionic Handbook requires you to have burnt down a building just to watch it burn.
I shot a
Like,
man in Reno just to watch him die.
yeah, it's like I mean, I guess I can burn down a building just to watch it burn if I because I want to take this specific prestige class. Like, how ridiculous is that? Like,
Like I'm a pyro, dude. I set stuff on fire. That's what I do.
And prestige classes, they usually like kind of fall under like one of two categories. There's prestige classes where they are just going to be straight up better than your core class of what you're playing with, because especially 3.0, but 3.5 there's a lot of dead levels, and prestige classes usually have something going on every single level, so
trying
a
to make
lot of
the most
times
out of it.
there's no downsides. Then there's the ones that are oddly specific, where they do one thing and they kind of fit in one setting. They feel kind of almost more like a game master class, because they're so oddly specific. The odds of you making a character and being in this situation where you work all the time is unlikely. And and I guess there's another group that kind of side upgrade prestige classes where they aren't really not really better. What you would otherwise get. But
Yeah,
not awful.
there's quite a few prestige classes where I'm like, man, this is okay, and I could take 10 levels of this, and it would be like, but like there was like a monk cleric one I found that was 10 levels, and I was like, well, if I take this, then I lose out on this for the cleric, and I could just do 10 levels of monk and 10 levels of cleric and be a better cleric than I would be if I took 5 levels of monk and 5 levels of cleric and 10 levels of this prestige class. Like, so there's definitely some that are just like so weak that they're almost laughable, but I've come across ones that are just so good and give so much stuff for both things that it's like, why wouldn't you pick that other thing, you know?
Yeah, there's some where if you fit the requirements for it, the only reason not to take it would be if there's another prestige class that would be even better.
100%. I actually think that would be a good topic for a future episode. It's just prestige classes.
Yeah, we should definitely do that one, you know, down the road. I know we've
There's
got
And
our
so many
next like 3 or
prestige
4
classes
lined
though.
up, so
oh yeah,
I know,
and
but like we'd have to search through a bunch of books and pull out our favorites. We wouldn't just be able to be like, "Oh yeah, prestige classes."
oh, there's got to
But
be hundreds, dude. I'm psyched about it. Just looking through this, this giant library of just prestige classes. It's going to be awesome.
yeah, it's great. It'll be awesome. We can just use the SRD for that, right? Because that it
Oh
has
yeah,
all the prestige classes on there. Yeah, so we don't even need to like have books ready to go for that.
yeah.
All right. Anyway,
But speaking of prestige classes, so there are some super cool prestige classes in the book that we're going to be going over today. And the book that we're going to be going over today is Stormwrack, Mastering the Perils of Wind and Wave. So this is one of the environmental books that came out for 3.5. I I was kind of on the fence about this book when we were first talking about it. I was like, yeah, okay, it's got, sea stuff in there. But how much could it really improve your game? And then I read it, and this book, I wish I had this book back when we were first playing 3.5. This book is just amazing, and it's got so much stuff in there that like current developers are using to this day, like the ship combat. That's Paizo uses a lot of that in Starfighter. Like there were the bones of so many things that I love in modern design that you can really see kind of got their start here. And you can say what you want about 3.5, but for the most part, they did not skimp on the splat books. Like the splat books are just fantastic.
oh yeah, I mean, like we had this topic as our like introductory episode, right? What did we think that 3.5 added to the rest of RPG gaming, like as like a bet like general rule, right? And this is right here is another book with another thing that's being used by an it's it the ship combat is kind of the entire basis of Starfinder, like at least Starfinder's spaceship combat, which is a huge portion of the game. Like, I mean, this is one more thing that D&D 3.5 walked so that they could run.
Absolutely. I just love this book, and the one point that I want to make before we really get into like specifics and the stuff that we really like about the book or things that we dislike about the book is that this is one of those books that, just like we were talking about last time, that you could just pick up and take to any system. Like especially if you're playing 5e, you can just pick it up and just use it. You change around the DCs a little bit and boom, you're done. If there's a stat block in there for a 3.5 monster, you just switch it out for the 5e monster. Bam, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were gonna let's get down to business here. We're going to prestige classes, you said?
All right, yeah. Let me share my screen. All right, Stormwrack, mastering the perils of wind and wave. Look at that guy. Look at him.
Yeah.
Look how insane he is.
That's a cool ass monster.
That's the I think it's called the Skellion or the Skrellian or something like that. It's like a really souped up Kraken. Actually, I really wish that I had looked at this book when I was running that Temple of Elemental Evil campaign, because they did fight a Kraken in that game, and I kind of wish I'd used this guy instead. So let me go to the table of contents. So Charles, I guess I'll kind of start out with you. What was something that just kind of caught your attention in this book, and something that you were really jiving on?
Well, something that was I think interesting about these splat books is how many options these give to player characters. A lot of these, books you'd think like, oh, this is for a game master, but each of these books gave a lot of new options to players, especially watery options. All the prestige classes are different kind of flavors of things to do. We have I believe it was two different arcane casters. The Scarlet Corsair is basically just a better rogue, which isn't hard to do. Sorry, 3.5 rogues.
Sick burn.
Yeah,
Take
not with the
that, Rogue.
pearls. Yeah, I felt really bad about them, but not of the pearl. They're kind of a underwater paladin. It doesn't actually let you breathe underwater. You have to find another way to do that. But they get bonuses when fighting underneath the waves. Legendary Captain's kind of a interesting one. It's more of a, I guess you'd call it an expert class. A lot of like leadership stuff and being like a captain running things. Leviathan Hunter, I think is pretty solid. I could see, fighter ranger going into that. And see which is Stormcaster. I forget which one is which, but one of them you can take 3 levels of it without hurting your spell casting progression, and the other one, the first level you take, you don't get any spell level progression, but every other level after that you do. So both are pretty good and upgrades over just being a wizard, because spellcraft, your spell casting progression for the wizard is really the very important thing about that class. Outside of that, they occasionally would get a bonus feat, but it wasn't much.
I mean, I think you're thinking of a Pathfinder. Wizards, I don't think get bonus. Well, oh yeah, they do. They get a couple of like meta magic bonus feats or something like that.
Yeah, I believe it's every 5 levels or something like that.
Sorry, it's a thing that bugs me because like this is not the first time it's come up. Like other classes have bonus feat written down as part of like under their special category as part of their level ups, and wizards don't. It's just in their text.
Yeah.
And it bugs the crap out of me that it's not like posted when they get their bonus feats in their special stat block, because I would never remember to take them, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, and as a wizard, especially as you get higher levels, you don't really need it.
Yeah, no, I never felt like I was lacking not having them, that's for sure. I think I made dozens and dozens of wizards and only just found out that they even got bonus feats because it didn't show up on the stat block, so I never bothered to look for them.
Yep, that is a common thing. That's actually a really common thing in Starfinder also, because Starfinder has like so many options that if it's not specifically like right there in your progression stat block, it's really easy to just, miss it.
Yep, just overlook stuff.
But to kind of piggyback, I just want to note something that I really like about this section, and it's the same thing that I've liked about every book that we've talked about so far. So check this out. Adia Ironheart, challenge rating 15, human rogue fighter Scarlet Corsair 8. Bam, right there. I don't have to do anything. She is right there. If I need a challenge rating 15 person, there she is. Got all her
Right.
feats, got her possessions, got you go down here, it tells you what all the stuff does. So I just really like that you have all these NPCs just already, right there, ready to use.
Oh yeah. I mean, the splat books for sure are great about that. Uh I mean, I think that's a carryover from 3.0 because I remember there's books in 3.0 that talk about like prestige classes uh that have, you know, character examples built in after the character, like ex, explanation. Dang it! There we go. That's the word I was looking for.
Another thing that I really love about this book is this little octopus. Just look at him.
I thought that's what you were gonna say to begin with when you
Yep.
scrolled over here. I was
Just
like,
look at
you're
him.
gonna say that octopus.
Look at him. He's so cool. He's kind of like Ultros from Final Fantasy VI. Just hanging out. Just look at him. Just being an octopus. He's great.
Yeah, you gotta have that familiar, baby. That water familiar.
All the time. All the time. And I mean, like a lot of these prestige classes, they just look great. Like the Stormcaster, I believe, didn't Paizo just kind of change, like just make that like a sorcerer archetype?
Probably. I know there's a bard that's also a kind of stormcaller kind of
Oh
thing
yeah, I remember that.
archetype. They can use their performances to also shoot down lightning every turn, and the like. Yeah, they have archetypes. That's kind of what and not really replace prestige classes are with, but you don't need prestige classes in first edition because the archetypes kind of fill that niche.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, and this book, it got me to thinking about this book that I read a long time ago. So I used to read Dragonlance all the time. Like I used to just inhale Dragonlance books. And in Dragonlance, there are different kind of elves. There's the Sylvanesti, the Quillanesti, the Darganesti, the Kaganesti, and I think some other ones. But the Darganesti are like the sea elves, right? And I actually have this book over on my bookshelf. It's called the Darganesti, and it's just like about them, about the sea elves and their like underwater lives. And that is a super, super interesting book. Um, it's kind of, in my opinion, head and shoulders above a lot of different Dragonlance books because it has a lot of really cool ideas in it and just a lot of cool stuff that you wouldn't really expect, a book of its kind to have. Um, and like as I was reading this book, I was thinking about that book, and then I was thinking about just different movies like The Abyss, and just all the different stuff that you could do in an underwater game that really like doesn't come up in normal D&D. So I mean this book is just, I mean you could play for years, using this book as a base.
Oh yeah, I mean you could definitely. There's so much stuff to do, like based on the water and stuff. And one of the things, since we're like kind of in the class area and we're kind of talking about class and stuff, that I wanted to bring up that was like I thought was really nice about this book, is that like there are other books that have like pirates, like Dread Pirate um and Swashbuckler, you know, and those are books like those are pirates, right? But they're not in this book. Like this book didn't feel the need to like take them and rework them or make a duplicate of them. It didn't step on other books' toes when it was making their prestige classes. Whereas like a lot of books, like especially in 3.5, there's you'll see it happen a fair amount if you've looked through enough books where like you'll see two or three different copies of a class and it's the same class. It's like ninja or something, right? And I can think of two copies of ninja right now and they're completely different. They have completely different stat blocks. They have completely different abilities on certain levels, like, but they're both ninja. And so you gotta like be like, oh no, this is the ninja from this book, not the ninja from that book. And so like it's just nice that this book was like, yeah, sure, we have Swashbuckler here, but it's from the Complete Warrior, so go look at that. And you know, they're good pirates. That's all we need to tell you about them. Like,
Yep, and I also like how they just spell it out for you here. They go good guys, bad guys, combat focused, moderate spell casting, strong spell casting. Boom, right there. It's like these are the good guys. Like, do they have to be? Yes. And I also just like these. I mean, like I'm a huge fan of any at all expanded character options. Like the character operations manual from Starfinder is one of my favorite splat books ever. And this book has a lot of those alternate class features that you can just take as any class. So it's almost like, you know, being able to build a totally separate class.
oh, see, look that right there. I'm now that I'm looking at this, the monk alternate class feature, Water Step. Who uses slow fall? It's so like you have to be right next to the wall. You have to be able to touch the wall. It only helps if you're within 100 feet. Like if you're max level 20, by that point you should have a ring of flying really. But like water step. That come on, that's cool, right? The ability to walk on water for short distances. Come on now, that's awesome.
It is very cool. There's a bunch of awesome stuff in here. And I always appreciate any book that gives you alternate class features so that you can just
Mhm.
take, you not, I'm sorry, like I don't mean to keep bashing, different editions, but that's one of the things that I really did not dig about fourth and fifth is just, a lot of those guys tend to be very similar, especially in fourth, because you were just going to put your main stat or your highest stat into your main stat because there was no reason not to. And kind of every fighter was the same as every other fighter, and every rogue was the same as every other rogue. And that's just one reason why I like, 3.5 and Pathfinder and similar games like that, because you can, you don't run into that. Well, you're playing the same character I am. It's like, no, you can, even if you're playing the same class, you can be vastly different. So another thing that I was really digging on, I'm going to go to page 215 really quick. This is what I loved. Like this just stood out to me. These random tables, right? So just look at all this. Um, and Charles, you had brought this up before. One of the reasons why I particularly like this style of random encounter table is that if you see over here, it goes EL1, EL2, EL3, EL4, EL5. And Charles brought this to my attention. So if you're level 1, you roll on this table. And the strongest thing that you can come up with is a monstrous crab, which is challenge rating 2, right? So a lot of different encounter tables that you'll find in 3.5, especially in 3.0. When I go back to the Temple of Elemental Evil, um, what we had this happen. The characters were only like level 2 or 3, and they ran into this like challenge rating 6 thing, and it was almost a TPK. It was only saved because of one of the characters had this oil of magic weapon, and he was able to put it on his weapon and actually hurt it. But it's easy, with some uh, random encounter tables to bite off more than you can chew. And with this, that doesn't happen. It keeps it in your level range.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing's yeah, like some of these random charts you see, they will be for the environment and for this, challenge ranges have this huge range of encounters where on average they're challenge rating 5 or something like that, and the party expected to start this game at level 1 or 3 or something like that, and it can just turn against the party very, very quickly if you use the random encounters. And this is nice because they have these different environments too. So it's like when you're in this environment, as their players are in here and get higher level, these are the different roles you can roll, and I like that quite a bit.
I also do, and what I also like is the most terrifying words that have ever come out of my mouth. Monstrous diving spider, colossal.
That, yep, that's just a big spider in the
Yep.
water.
Like, oh yeah, I'm down here on the bottom of the sea. Probably not going to be any giant spiders. Like, nope, it's the biggest spider, and
The biggest
he's
possible spider you can see.
and he's gonna stab you. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, one of the things that I particularly like about this book too is since we were kind of on the subject of these tables and like how they kind of link to certain kinds of places, is the section in the book where they talk about like terrains, like specific terrains, like beaches and ice flows and open being out in the open water and tidal marshes and bogs and things like that. The marine wilderness terrain on page 14. Um, I think that having, descriptions of the areas and what things look like having like being able to get this information, one for yourself just so you kind of know what to build the map to look like, and two, to kind of like offer, random debris and stuff for your people to hide behind. If you're winging it, because I know some people, they'll just wing it. They won't have any terrain or anything to put down on a table, or they'll have like they won't really have a map. They'll just like draw out a square on roll 20 or something and be like, oh, this is where you guys are at, right? And then so like if you have something like this where you can be like, okay, well here's like a beach, or you guys are like in a coral reef or whatever, like you have this stuff down there that's like, okay, yeah, it has 4 foot tall like coral branches that you can hide behind and stuff. So you have that information there about the area that your players are exploring, so that you can give that information to them and they can utilize it in combat or in some way, like whether it's combat or not.
Yeah, 100%. Like anything that you can do to add versatility and like environmental stuff to combat.
And immersion.
Yeah, it's great. And this right here, this is kind of another thing. Uh, this little table right here, walls, like ship walls. There is a table for ship walls. This book has everything. It's got so much great stuff. And just look at this. Like if you're playing 5e or something, you can just take this. You don't have to change anything except like maybe the break DCs, and you can just take it. If you're doing an adventure in the high seas in 5e, and one of your characters is like, I try to punch through the hull. Like, I don't think there are any books in 5e that have rules for that, so I'm just gonna make something up. Like, look at this. It's like you can just take this.
Right, exactly. And that's like, and that's there too because I'm pretty sure this book has cannons, like rules for cannons, because it's a lot of ship stuff. So you would need to know if you punched a hole in another ship when you shot it with a cannon. Like you'd have to know that DC, that hardness DC, and the amount of hit points per square inch that a ship wall had.
Extremely important. And I mean, this section is just full of that stuff. Like, look at this. Storm perils. This tells you everything you need to know about storms and what happens to your ship during a storm. You got speed, moving against the wind, moving with the wind, just all kinds of different stuff. It is just, it's so thorough. This one, I love this one. I wanted to bring attention to this. We have this picture here that really reminds me of the R.A. Salvatore books, the Drizzt books, when Drizzt and the party are sailing around with Captain Deutermont and stabbing pirates and stuff. Uh, like what would happen if you shoot a fireball at another ship? Well, this tells you.
Right. Yeah, and I like how it covers not just Fireball, but the other spells like Lightning Bolt, Magic Missile, because Magic Missile, it bypasses damage reduction. It bypasses unpassable damage reduction, which is the only damage type that bypasses undamaged damage reduction is force damage, which is what Magic Missile is. And so you would think, oh, well, if that bypasses damage reduction, that's going to deal damage to the walls of a ship. I could just blow a hole in the bottom of the ship and we can wait for it to sink. But specifically says here in this book, Magic Missile doesn't hurt ships, doesn't hurt objects.
Nope, it just goes, just pops right on out. Charles, was there anything else that you were really digging when you were reading through this book?
Well, it's not much of a 3.5 discussion without talking about the spells. You've flipped through this book a few times, Cliff. How many spells do you think are in this book?
I would say at least 50. I want to say it was a large section.
Yep. If you count the psionic abilities, it is over 50. 47 spells, 4 psionic powers, and the spread of spells between the classes is a little interesting. Bards are able to cast 7 of these spells, clerics just 1, druids 26, paladins 1, rangers 8, and sorcerers and wizards can cast 30 of them.
Okay, so very, very sorcerer, wizard, druid heavy.
Yep,
I
and
I think that makes sense. Coming from a standpoint that the druids would be home at home there, because I mean it's not the forest, and that's where you typically think of druids, but really druids are just nature casters. So there's got to be a druid out there somewhere who worships a sea god or whatever, or a water elemental. So it makes sense that they would have good like spells from the ocean.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I really like about this book is that they included those deities, like I think it's pronounced Blibdolopalop or Blib blah 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 blah, like whatever his name is. Um, and Umberlee, I really like Umberlee as a deity. She is insane and she will kill you. And just like all these other oceanic deities that you can draw from.
Yeah, and rangers at 8 doesn't sound like a lot, but for a 4th level caster, that is quite a lot for the ranger, which also makes sense, with the whole survival kind of thing that they have going for them.
100%. And there's just so much good stuff. Like if you're playing um like a campaign on the high seas, you're a dread pirate or you're whatever, and you're the ship's wizard, you can disguise ship. Look at that. Just like
That's
make
so
your ship look
cool.
like another ship. It's like, no, I'm just another, ship just like you. Don't worry about it.
Fire the main cannons.
You can detect ships.
Oh, dude, look at this fiendish kraken. Doesn't have a challenge rating.
Yeah, because you summon it with the spell. I believe it costs experience points.
Ooh.
And it's an evil spell. But it is insanely powerful, and if you hate your players, you should definitely have someone cast this on them.
All right, be prepared. Be prepared for that one in the future.
If you hate your players, you should definitely be prepared to cast this on them.
Like, I'm tired of this game. I'm just gonna kill you guys.
Yeah, or if you feel like they need to be humbled a little bit.
Yeah, dude, Krakens are no joke.
Oh yeah, that spell that you just scrolled past made me like I've completely forgot. This isn't even to mention the fact that this book covers a section on the plains, like on different plains that have water and the different oceans that they have, which is I think another really cool like addition to this book.
Yeah, it's got a huge section on it, which is again just this book is just packed full of stuff. And my last thing to say about this topic that we're currently on is
Megalodon empowerment.
Megalodon empowerment. That's all I'm gonna say. Megalodon empowerment. Mic drop.
Mic drop. Oh man. Yeah, and you know, it's so funny because we when we were coming up with talking about this book, we were like, you especially were like, well, you know, we'll throw that book and we'll throw Frostburn and we'll throw the desert one in there, Sandstorm. All it's like one episode, because how much could there really be to talk about with just like books about environments?
And I was wrong.
And now we're making a whole episode on just the book about the ocean. Will that happen with the next two books? I don't know. Who knows? Maybe not. Like, we'll see. But that brought me back. That made me think of something else that I wanted to talk about when we were doing this segment on the trifecta, as it were. Is that this book, as much as it really is about the ocean and being in the ocean and being out on the high seas and being a pirate and doing ocean things, it is not exclusively for a game intended to be like on the super high seas all the time. It is like you can take, you know, a lot of these water creatures, throw them in a random ocean, a random lake or something that the characters have to be hanging out around. You could have the characters have to take a short trip over the ocean from one continent to the other. You know, they're doing a lot of stuff on land. They go over the ocean. They deal with this little section of this stuff, and then they're on another continent, and they never look at the ocean again. Right? No big deal. But it still like, even in such a small capacity, it still has so much stuff that you could use and throw at them that they might be like, wow, maybe we should have bought our own boat or something. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And Charles, I kind of like to get your thoughts on some of this stuff, because in your game, we recently did a water level, which was really interesting. And I feel like this book would just be perfect if you were planning like just a water level.
Yes, if you're playing like a dungeon, you want to do a water temple, or the like, and fill up with a lot of interesting creatures and challenges, traps and the like, this would be very good. This book also has a lot of, or it has a few encounters on it that would be very easy to swap out for a different game. My favorite one being a group of goblin pirates um, that are traveling around doing stuff. There's a few different quest hooks there, but you can easily take that idea and change it for any kind of D&D game, 5th edition, Pathfinder, and the like. And all of them are like that. Easy enough to adjust from levels. You just take, the plot hooks, general ideas. You can take the maps and the layouts and just fill them up with what's appropriate to your character. Is very easy to swap in and out.
100%. I absolutely agree, and I'm right there with you on that goblin thing. I'm trying to get to the page right now, but like I saw that goblin encounter, and it was just the funniest thing. Like you could kind of tell that like maybe people who went on to design like some of Paizo were kind of working on this, because they were working on a lot of the 3.5 stuff and a lot of the like Dungeon Magazine stuff back then. But look at this, like this is part of the encounter. Goblin Commander trainees.
Oh man.
I'm not good enough to be like a real goblin warrior yet, but a goblin commoner trainees, I'm sorry. So these little trainee goblins who just come like running at you with like a stick, and they have no idea what they're doing.
Right? Oh my goodness, that's so good. That's
And
top notch.
a lot of these goblin characters, they have personality and history. There's one that's super loyal to their boss, and the other one, the captain is I believe a rare rat in addition to, or some rare creature in addition to being a goblin.
Yeah, looks like were rat.
Yeah, and yeah, that's just very interesting. You can see, why goblins would follow them up, and it's it's also one of those funny things where, like, they have these little interactions with each other, and there's going to be some parties and groups, if you just pretty much run this as is, who will never find out about those little personalities because they are just too quick to take them out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like this is like a pretty low end encounter for a group of players, especially if they're messing around with like goblins. But at the same time, maybe it's like more mid lane ish because there's that were rat in the mix, and that's like at least a +4.
yeah, and that's what I love about this section. You've got this whole thing, and this is just ready to go, ready to use all these different stat blocks. Like, look here, it's got all of the stat blocks right there. It's even got, I love these, the hook. Um, so this goblin says, "Yes, I'm right away, Captain." This goblin says that won't save you now. This goblin says, "Grr, ar." It's this. I remember the trainees said something really dumb. Um, so say, try to die with dignity, you pathetic landlubber. I think I should direct the attack. So like it gives you all this insight into their personalities, and oh yeah, so Captain Naki, yeah, she's a challenge rating 4. She's pretty beefy.
Yeah, this pretty good, pretty solid little fight there for the players.
Yeah, so you got their pirate ship, you got all the crew, you got all this different stuff, you got all their stats, you got their secret base. It's like that's the start of a campaign right there. Or just something that you throw into your campaign. And like that's not even the only one. There's all these different uh places, and they're complete with maps and stat blocks and everything that you can just throw in.
Mm-hmm. So good.
Yeah, I could easily see expanding that to last like 4 or more sessions, with the general idea, maybe have multiple groups of goblin pirates and, their island treasures. Maybe you find a map that leads you to somewhere else. There's a lot of interesting things they could, do for this. And this wouldn't be out of place for like a level 3 party, I'd say, to handle. Um, so that it could be a pretty good starting adventure for the group.
I'm right there with you. And this guy, this ship is about to have a really bad day.
Oh yeah, you always see that guy, and you're like, man, where am I gonna use a dragon turtle? Like where am I gonna use that? Like in a campaign. Well, here you go. This
Yep,
is where you're gonna use it.
I've
right
I've
there.
I've seen a joke about players never going onto the water, never going on a ship or a raft or anything like that, because there's all these monster encounters that the game master just really really wants to use and never can because the party's never in water. And yeah, encounters in water are quite deadly, especially to players that aren't prepared to fight in the water.
Oh yeah, especially like
Yeah,
your fighters and your paladins, they're decked down with all this plate, What are they going to do? And I remember that back in the day, that seemed to be like the common wisdom is just like if your DM tries to get you to go on a boat, don't go. He's going to be like, yeah, you could take the ship or you could take the overland route, but that's going to take 2 months and blah blah. It's like we're going overland.
I've never had I got to admit I've never had a party turn down getting on a boat. They're always so excited for getting on a boat. They think they're going to be doing cool pirate stuff, and they never get to do cool pirate stuff.
That's a goal for 2024. Do cool pirate stuff.
Do
the,
cool pirate stuff.
the secret for me for having players get on a ship is to start the adventure off with them already on a ship.
Yep, you don't get a choice.
Yep.
You're on the ship.
You're on a boat.
That's another thing about Dragonlance. The first Dragonlance book almost ends in the first chapter because there's a dwarf that just will not get on a boat, even though there's an army literally chasing them and about to kill them if they catch them. And he's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not getting on the boat.
That's dude. See, that's what I loved about the Dragonlance books is like you could definitely see somebody was running that as a campaign, and they had that one asshole player who was like, "Nope, not today, son. I'm
Not
not,
doing it.
not
Don't
doing
care.
it."
Like, we're all gonna die. It's like, well, you guys get on the boat. I'll stay here and fight the army.
You mean you guys are gonna die
Well, so
on that fucking boat?
yep, 100%. And then they all die and he lives. But there's just so much cool stuff in this book. I mean, I think we could go on and on about it all day, but I think most of the major points that I wanted to to make we've touched on. Is there anything that you guys really wanted to kind of talk about that we haven't gotten to talk about before we kind of start to wind down here?
I'm feeling pretty good.
Childs,
Yeah.
what say you?
I'm feeling pretty good too. Just like the map that you were showing just there. That's another fun layout for a dungeon if you are having the players going around and easy enough to change it to whatever edition you're using by swapping out the creatures or even changing the challenge rating by using different ones. But a lot of these layouts and the room details and the like, very easy to use for no matter what your character levels are. I keep on mentioning that because when I was newer, there were all these encounters, and I'm like, well, I can't use that because my party level is 5, and this is for a challenge rating of 12. I can't use that, but you can. You just have to take all the monsters and traps out and put
Oh,
them with things more popular.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And on that note, I remember I was playing this game Pathfinder Kingmaker a while back, and once I got up in levels, I was noticing that my party was like level 16, and you can see the challenge rating of things in that game. I think you have to like have a certain skill to see it, but uh, you can see the challenge ratings, and they were like throwing stuff at me. There was like 22, 25, 30, and there would be like 2 or 3 of these things in an encounter, and my party's like level 16. So yeah, I mean you can throw. I mean with 5e especially, 5e the developers just said like throw challenge rating out the window because it's useless.
And
Yeah.
there is a
Yeah.
point to that. Like I think the giant crab, I believe that's challenge rating of 2, and I believe that's one of those notorious monsters that are actually much stronger than their challenge rating suggests. Memory's a little hazy, but I believe that was one of them. And like like shades, or I
Oh,
believe
they'll kill you.
yeah, the challenge rating of 3, I think, and technically that's suitable for a level 1 party.
If they
It's
have
supposed to
magic
be
items
challenging.
with ghost touch, which they don't.
They don't. They kind of need a cleric who had preferred magic weapon and cast that before the fight, long enough for it to be useful, and then hopefully it doesn't kill anyone and create a new one or a new shadow, and it's just really bad. And I've seen dungeons written for level 1 parties where they have a shade in there, and I was like, why do you hate players so much?
Yeah, I was literally just yesterday I do a lot of like random designing, uh not with like the hope of running the thing, in the near future, but I do a lot of like designing just for later, like, um in case, I ever get time to run a game. Um and I was
That'll never
literally
happen.
I was literally doing that exact same thing. I was doing this whole I was building this level 1 thing, and I was like, oh yeah, this is like these cryopods, and there's people in them, and some of them are alive and some of them are dead, and I was like, this would be really cool to have a shade. Like if you mess with the cryopod, the shade will come out and kill. And I was like, they're level 1. I don't want to. I mean, they're gonna die.
If they're
Yeah.
level 3, they might die. Yes.
Yeah, it's really like it's about knowing your players, knowing their gear, knowing what they can kind of handle and stuff. Like one of the things that I really appreciated about 3.5 was that like most monsters they'll have like the option to progress somehow, like in their like usually they'll be like, oh yeah, like they can take levels in monstrous beast or whatever, magical beast or whatever, and gain, you know, this much extra skill points per level, and like this is their hit dice and stuff. So if you know like what you need, you can like level them up to be more dangerous. So you know you're throwing let's say you've got like a level 10 group and you're throwing like a level something simple at them that they should have been able to beat when they were level 5, you know. uh and they're like, oh, this is no big deal, but what they don't know is that behind the scenes you've leveled it up, you know. It's a level 10 displacer beast or something random along those lines, you know. And uh there's ways to like to make things weaker too, you know, like something was already in a fight before you started like fighting it, so it's doesn't have its full amount of hit points, and maybe it got hit with like a spell that lowers its strength or its constitution or something, so it's easier to kill and hit and stuff. So I mean, you just gotta you can make things better or worse for your characters, which is I think highly underrated thought process for players when they you know, go getting into shenanigans with the GMs.
Definitely. My favorite is taking monster like a minotaur or ogre or something like that and giving them a level barbarian. Barbarian's kind of my go-to for favorite thing to give monsters one level of when I want them to have a little bit of extra bite,
Uh-huh.
especially if the players are, you know, well above the challenge rating that it previous was at. And yeah, all of a sudden, when they hit and hurt, levels of rogue for the sneak attack also isn't bad for like swarming enemies. If you have like goblins or kobolds, having a couple levels of rogue, making the players have to try to avoid being sneak attacked or surprising the players and gain this kind of alpha strike with them before the players kind of manage to fight them off. Uh, Adding class levels and adding templates, that's what they're called, on top of creatures to make them a bit more challenging than their regular kind is nice. I usually give players some kind of hint that this individual monster is different from the ones they encountered before. If they're fiendish, describe it having fiendish characteristics. If it's a barbarian, you might want to mention about being like taller or stronger
Mm-hmm.
than the other ogre that they encountered just in the other room.
He was a different ogre.
That guy definitely wasn't as skilled as I am at
Yeah.
being an ogre. I'm a way
Like,
better ogre.
it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm an ogre, but I also go to the gym. You
Do
know,
you even lift?
like I do. I don't. That'd be a good one
Yeah,
to throw in there. Weak ogre.
weak ogre doesn't lift.
Nope.
Has -10, has -5 to strength.
You
Hits
go
Is
like
with
hits
the
like a wet paper towel.
yep.
the
Like,
uh,
no,
young
that was easy.
young ogre or the youth, whatever they
Oh
call it,
yeah.
where you face the younger type and give them.
Yep, and that
Everyone loves the baby, the goblin baby dilemma.
yep, then you just throw that one right in there and it's just watch how that whole situation plays out. But that is that's some good stuff, and I think I don't know. I think that's going to be cool stuff for another time. But really quick before we end off today, did you guys want to touch on anything else real quick?
No, I think I'm good.
Well,
I think I'm good.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I've thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. Again, I didn't think that there was that much here when I first, Lonnie, when you first pitched this idea, and I was wrong. There was just a lot in this book, and there's so much that you can use in your current game, regardless of what system you're running. So I think for today, for the 3.5 book club, I've been Cliff. I have been joined by Lonnie Morris, and I have been joined by Charles, and we have been ranting for the better part of an hour about Stormwrack, mastering the perils of wind and wave. And I certainly hope that this has been informative and that you can use this book and all of the cool stuff in it in some of your games. So I will see you later.